Can we not just allow golf to be that thing that releases the pressure valve? When we go on these trips, why are we going to them? And what do we value about them?
Yeah.
Does golf come first, or does getting pissed come first? Golf is better when played in good company. It's even better when it's accompanied by the art of conversation, healthy debate, and a sprinkling of light-hearted humour. Hi, I'm Kris Lynch. I'd like to welcome you to Golf Buddies Aloud. Brought to you by Golf Yourself Healthy, Golf Buddies Aloud is a supplementary podcast format which accompanies our main flagship podcast available on all major podcasting platforms. You're listening to an audio-only version of this episode. If you'd like to watch the video version of this episode, then head over to the GYH Substack, where you can subscribe for free to watch in full. The link to the GYH Substack is in the show notes, so with just one or two clicks, it'll take you straight there. In this special episode, I'm joined by my golf buddies Mark Horyna and Emil Weber, editors of Depeche Golf, an international golf and culture magazine which comes from Europe with love for the game. We recorded this conversation back in December, shortly after the November release of the second edition of the magazine. I consider it a privilege to have had the opportunity to write and have a text published in Volume 2 of Depeche Golf, a piece entitled The Maddening Crowd, which offers a unique perspective on golf societies and how, on the one hand, they offer many health and well-being benefits, such as the forming of new friendships, camaraderie, visiting new places, trying out new golf courses, and the building of a support network even. Yet there are equally certain aspects to golf societies which, in my experience, can sometimes leave a bad taste, especially when they involve big groups, copious amounts of booze, toxic masculinity, and the lure of herd mentality. I hope you enjoy listening and will consider buying yourself a copy of Depeche Golf Volume 2. Or if you stick around until the very end of this episode, I'll tell you more about how you can be in with a chance to enter a prize draw and win yourself a free copy of Depeche Golf Volume 2. But without any further ado, let's tee off and jump into the conversation. My two guests here today, Mark and Emil, I've known them for some time now, and I think it's fair to say they know my style. They know I like playing around with words. So maybe, Mark, when I say Golf Buddies Aloud, what kind of golf reference does that talk to?
Societies.
Partly.
It does chime on the theme that we were working on for the last issue of Depeche Golf, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, it does, and we're going to talk about that in this conversation. But what I intended it to be is, you know, when there's adverse weather at golf courses and you get the old member email that says, no buggies allowed, or golf buggies allowed, right? So this is Golf Buddies, because I like to prove to people that I actually have buddies and have real friends in my golf journey, like you two. But then also, when I came up with this Golf Buddies Aloud idea, I was like, the allowed it's not the ALLOWED, it's the ALOUD. And there's a lot of my British listeners will know Girls Aloud, a pop band who came out of one of these really manufactured pop idol TV programs. It's a kind of a mixture of the two things. But at its heart, Mark, like you say, it's golf friends speaking stuff and just shooting the breeze. Anyway, what's your view on golf buggies?
I don't believe in golf buggies. I think it's a pedestrian sport. I have been in golf buggies before, though. I'm not going to say. And there are courses I've played that where they won't let you out without buggies. I think it's a huge part of American golf culture that you do take a buggy and you pay for it extra. But if I have the chance to walk, I'd say, like, as long as I can walk, I will walk, always. And I'll walk until I can't walk anymore. But before giving up the game, I will ride and play. But I think that's something that's in the far distant future, because I believe it's really, there's something about hitting a wayward shot and then walking into the rough and looking for your ball and not speeding up while other people are on the other side of the fairway and then riding around back and forth. It's got nothing to do with the game. It's not, no, sorry. For me, it has nothing to do with the game.
Emil, where do you stand on this highly divisive topic?
Yeah, I think because it's not such a big thing like here in Germany and like where I grew up and kind of the people I play golf with. So I mean, I never usually, except when I do travel at courses, where's the norm? I'm just thinking back to my my Canada trip this year. That's also in the second issue, and that was like. It was just like standard that we had golf buggies, and I never usually do that, and that's why for me, like when I do it once a year or something, it's actually kind of fun. If it was, if it was becoming like the main thing for people who I play golf with around me, then I think I'd have a more strong stand on it, and would probably be more against it. But as it is, it's not so much an issue, I think, for I mean, when I go back to my home course in Darmstadt, I mean, there's just no buggies. No one has buggies. So
yeah. I've just had a thought as you were explaining that, Emil, that again, golf yourself healthy, thinking about what's so great about golf and what's healthy about golf. Although Mark's got a contrarian view that he's very much looking forward to sharing on this podcast. I think when you get in a buggy, it kind of, it quite literally accelerates the whole round, or in theory, it should accelerate the round of golf, but it doesn't always. But with that, it almost accelerates and removes some of the natural social element of, because like when you're walking between shots and you're with your golf buddy and you're sort of shoulder to shoulder and talking about stuff, I think it just, now I think about it, in my experience, it doesn't allow for that in the same way that walking the course maybe does. So
maybe just to add on that, I mean, I deeply think that the experience of walking, like walking every step of the way, and I mean, especially in the UK, more linksy courses when you actually, I don't know, the ground maybe, all those little. I'm a believer that like every part of the and like like really experiencing the experience, analog and in its full, it's very important to the experience. So, and to the social part of it, and also the noises, like all those unnatural noises adding to the experience. So yeah, I mean, I guess the more we would talk about it, the more strongly I would have a stance on it.
It sounds like it, yeah. But I'd like to dwell on that one point that you just said, that it sorts of speeds up things. It's not really true, is it, that you don't play quicker? But what happens is that it's like fast forwarding. But we're all old enough to remember what fast forwarding means with a CD or with a tape recorder, and it sort of it's like it sort of rips the experience to shreds. The talk, the banter, the deep discussions you can have on a golf course, it all gets shredded by the whirring of the noise and the taking of the corners and the looking for the ball and the going around in circles and then the jumping in and out of the car, and then if you're in the cart, and then if you're on a course that has paths only, which makes the whole thing even worse, then you've got people leaving the car, going to the ball, looking at the ball, getting back to the car, measuring again, taking a club, forgetting a club, having the wrong club, going back and forth. And it's like madness. It's like madness if you're a two ball behind four people in carts. And it looks like you're on the Autobahn. it looks like there's cars everywhere. No, the longer we talk about it, the stronger my position is getting.
There's something you just said in there, Mark, actually, which is kind of like it's a segue, which we'll use a bit later on for. It talks to the piece that I've just written and contributed to Volume 2 of Depeche, which is these Golf Society trips and where we've been abroad. There's a famous within our group anyway. It's not like it's viral on social media, but one of these groups of golf buddies that I've been away with before, to Portugal it was, a couple of them always remind me and dig out this video of where I did exactly what you just described, Mark, was I drove the buggy up the cart path on the left of the fairway, got to my ball, walked into the fairway, pontificated, decided that actually, no, it wasn't a 6-iron, it's a 5-iron instead, walked back to the golf cart, and the whole time they're just like, what is he doing? and he's a shit golfer as well, so like, it's like, it doesn't really matter, just hit the damn 6-iron, man. You're gonna fat it or do something with it, and the 5-iron isn't your savior. But yeah, anyway, it's really, really interesting. And I think, last point on this, I'm sure you guys have seen and heard it too. It feels like a lot of the bashing that buggies take and the narrative around it is almost like, oh, the youth of today, why don't they, they're always looking for the shortcuts and the easy way or whatever. But I almost think like if you reframe the narrative more around like, what are you missing out on? Like in what you were describing there, Mark, in terms of the, because I can understand why people go in buggies and stuff, but at the same time, it's like you can't, you don't know what you're missing out on unless you've just tried it kind of like analog as Emil was describing. So anyway, let's get to know my guests, my golf buddies a bit better. So who is Emil? Tell us a bit about you.
I'm Emil. I've been playing golf for pretty much as long as I can remember. At some point, like 5 years ago, I decided to go out as the backpacking golfer. I'd done like backpacking and golfing trips to mainly the UK, and was filming, writing, photographing about that, and through that met Mark, and we very organically built up a relationship around our perspectives on golf. And Mark had this idea of a magazine in the back of his mind, that a magazine that's a bit different to what's out there, and we just really decided to do that, and have just had, as we've just mentioned, our first full year of producing these 2 issues of Depeche Golf. And to me, we like to say, or Mark it doesn't like to hear, or I once said this, and that I'm in charge of all things visual. So I'm in charge for the layouting and stuff. But in essence, we are both doing both, and obviously, I guess curated this this second issue together as well.
And a beautiful second issue, 2 beautiful issues already, if I may say so. And as you were saying earlier, Emil, I certainly hope you get your backpack on and come over to Wales next year, pay me a visit. Mark, tell us a bit about you. And how does one pronounce your surname? I've known you a while now, but I still don't pronounce it.
It's Horyna. It's Horyna. And what I tell English-speaking people is that they should take the word foreigner and just put an H in front of it, which makes it a lot more difficult to pronounce it, because then they start thinking. So it's basically, as you write it, it's Horyna. Yeah, I've always wanted to have a golf magazine, and the idea was born out of a feeling of missing something. There was, there's some great magazines out there, but none were the sort of magazine that I imagined, even though some of them come really close to what we want to do. There's some great magazines out there. There's some great magazine makers out there, people we really love to connect with and have great relationships with. But there was missing something in our initial idea, or my initial feeling was there's something missing with a European perspective. And I'm not talking about an English perspective or Scottish perspective, but a genuinely European perspective. And that's what we set out to do with the first issue. which is basically dubbed From Europe with Love for the Game. We do have a very diverse golf culture over here, which people in Scotland will find strange sometimes, but they're because you did bring the game over to Europe, to continental Europe, but it has evolved. There's a lot of things that are slightly different here than they are in UK.
Such as, Mark?
That it's really difficult to pinpoint it. There's a different culture. Golf is not a grassroots sport over here. It's something that was brought in, and it was basically hijacked by the ruling class. I think you can say that. It was established by nobility here in Germany, by a bored nobility after the First World War. They lost their political power, and they found other things to do, industry and golf. So we do have a golf culture that has a lot to do, or you could probably say it has a lot to do with class, even though we do not really have classes. And, the British system is more as a class system than the European system is, but it has a lot to do with wealth. It's a sport for wealthy people. A lot of people start at a much later age in Germany, so you don't really have these huge junior groups. That's changed in the last decades, but a lot of people originally started at an age where they had already achieved stuff in their life, so they didn't really. A lot of people didn't really grow up with the game, but sort of came to the game at a point in their lives when they had achieved so much that they thought that things should work the way they think it should, and that has led to a certain culture that I'm not going to criticize, but I think it's generally different to cultures in England, Scotland, Wales, Ireland, South Africa. South Africa doesn't count, but New Zealand and Australia, for example. But to get to the point, and it's interesting to talk about this culture. It's not, and to challenge what it's done with people, and to reimagine the spirit of the game as it's lived here. So we set out to do this in the first issue, and quickly found out that there's much, much more to what we want to do than just talk about European golf. So that's why the second issue is far broader and has a far wider approach to the game. I think we're still looking for our boys.
I wonder, given how you've just explained that then, Mark, and contextualised golf in continental Europe, let's talk about Depeche Golf firstly, what it is and what you guys are trying to achieve with it, and then lead into how is that addressing, how is that playing into that golf culture, or is it trying to respectfully challenge it?
I might go back to how Mark and I met, and sort of what also I think sparked the creativity in both of us is that I think we both kind of felt like we just have a natural, or just because of our history and I don't know who we are and the experiences we've made in the game, I felt like we were both kind of had not the same, but similar perspectives on what makes the game so great. We both have a love for going to, I don't know, it doesn't have to be, if we go to Scotland, it doesn't have to be playing the old course and Kingsbarns and Carnoustie and flying back, but we both have traveled to more remote places, played those little quirky 9-holers that incorporate so much of the spirit of the game that we love, and we get so much joy out of little small places with character, for example. Or we've made our experiences with that golf scene, if I may say so, in Germany, that I for a long time, and as a youth, I played in the youth team for the Frankfurt Golf Club, which is probably one of the top 5 most exclusive clubs in Germany, and sort of also have had my upbringing there, and I've sort of have had my experiences with the German golfing elite, and I feel like we're both in that sense sort of have always been a bit more of, I guess, colorful characters in this game in the way Mark has written about the game for many years, and I've kind of written and photographed the game. So I guess in a way it's this. There are magazines that have this American focus. There's obviously the amazing Links Diary focusing on Scotland and the UK, and we, for one thing, obviously it was sort of the game in Europe and the game and also with the second issue developing a global game. But I think the other things that's just really important for us is to I think you can see it in a lot of ways. It's different perspectives, really kind of celebrating the spirit of the game, whatever it may be, or the different perspectives on it. But also, I guess that was one of the things we set out to, was challenging or telling different stories, or telling similar stories in a different way. When we profile a young upcoming professional golfer from Germany, we don't want to catch her and the newest her newest sponsor's clothing line on the driving range, but we went with Alexander Försterling. We captured her in Berlin in the U-Bahn in kind of a Berlin night, dark winter aesthetic, but also in the second issue, just trying to incorporating different views and sometimes challenging the status quo, but also introducing colors. I think quirkiness and colorness and kind of dusting off the status quo. That's the long reply. I hope Mark can relate to that.
Yeah, can I add on to that, because Kris, because I think what Emil just said is how many stories this game has that aren't being told, and how many facets this game has that are being ignored, or just are just not mainstream enough for the big magazines to want to tell. And I think we have a certain way of telling stories, a genuine way, and that has given us. That has given us a key to a tremendous amount of stories that need to be told. I think that, because we were discussing this once with one of our collaborators, who said, well, to the first issue, he said something like, "There's so many stories in there, but aren't you afraid of running out of stories?" And the thing is, I'm much more afraid that we'll never learn to focus down and to boil down, and that we'll always be adding one story more and another story more. And we're 144 pages each issue. That's a lot of storytelling, and we even sometimes take a smaller letters to put more text into onto the page, so that we can tell even more stories. And I think that's something that we've set out, is to tell all these stories and to find different ways of telling these stories. Also, not only just to find the stories and tell them, but also to find different ways, sometimes very new ways of telling the stories. So
just gone back to volume 1, and you were both referencing that as Alexandra Försterling, and what I personally love about that piece is if you take her as a elite professional golfer as an example, right, that is the only time I can think of that I've come across a story being told about a professional golfer in that way. It's so personal, and it's whereas you just couldn't imagine, or I personally couldn't imagine, the kind of top, the sort of the mainstream golf magazines writing about or talking about a professional golfer in that way. There's a very formulaic kind of, what's in the bag? What wedges is Alexandra Forsterling playing with? And tell us about that event that you played in the LET. I guess that for me is just is a nice demonstration of. I must admit I haven't read that article cover to cover, but I'm just looking back at it now, and it comes across in the way in which you guys are describing it, and the whole magazine does, right? So you've spoken there then a bit about what Depeche or the origin story of it. So your 2 editions in now. How do you? Let's reflect on the year, because it's been a year for you guys now, and as it has been for me too. I guess doing what you're doing and doing a print magazine as well, that's quite challenging in the modern day. So, what have been the successes? What are you most proud of in this year?
I'm going to start because I think first and foremost, I think we're both very, very, very happy, proud, and humbled by the tremendous, and I get tears in my eyes usually talking about this, by the tremendous amount of love we've received. I know that sounds a bit kitschy, but that was completely overwhelming. Some of it, even the smaller gestures. I've had people approach me who I met in different worlds in a different lifetime, who saw that we were making a magazine and subscribed immediately and immediately went into a Kickstarter campaign. We've had people coming up to us and say, because we went into this Kickstarter thing, saying, okay, how can I help you? And then they just, they donated money, and we're talking about like €1,000. People just came up and gave us €1,000 to start this thing. There have been so many people who have said so many wonderful things about what we're doing on one side, but on the other side, and that's something that's even stronger, the collaborators we found and the people we have met on this journey for the last year, the positive energy, the love they've given, the time they've given, the energy they've given, the art they've given, because we're at the moment incapable of paying anyone. It. We can't pay. So we finance the printing, and everything else isn't on top. But, we've been talking to historians and people, they'll go into their archives and they'll find pictures for us. They'll write for us. We have collaborators in Australia. We were looking for pictures of Kings Island, and then this bloke I used to work for ages ago, I wrote to him and said, Will, we really treasure your photography. Would you like to be part of this? There's no money in this project. And immediately Will Watts said, yeah, of course, I'd love to. Yeah, here, take. And he sent us, how many photos did he send us, Emil? 200 or 300 photos we could choose from. And all that, and the people we've met along this journey, also our readers, some of them will write to us and say, this is fantastic. This is what I've been waiting for. Yesterday, I read something that one of the blokes in a Facebook group said, this is the best golf magazine in the world. Now, it's just a Facebook group, okay? And it's just a comment from someone. But it's really, really, really nice. And it's something that's we treasure. I think we both treasure that. It's what you strive on, because we do this magazine not only for ourselves, but for the readers out there. And the idea that what we're doing is loved by others is fantastic. It's really, really nice. And when people come to us and say oh, I just read this story about the ladies of Carnoustie, right? We did a piece about Carnoustie Ladies Golf Club. And I was a bit lost for words doing this piece, and the photography was fantastic by Edward Broughton, a Scottish photographer. And so we just decided, okay, let's not talk too much about them. Let's just let these pictures speak. So we've got this stretch of 10 pages, or I don't know how many pages there are. And it's just pictures of these wonderful elderly women looking into the camera. And people, random guys are writing, I really, really loved your piece about the Carnoustie ladies. And it's so different for what the usual mainstream media does. And that has, for me, been one of the major takeaways from this year, the love and passion that you can get if you're on the, if you're willing to go out and find it.
If I may just respond to that, and then Emil, I'll bring you in. When I talking about golf yourself healthy and what that means, for me to say that this is talking about golf being good for your mental health or your physical health or whatever, yes, it is. Golf can be those things. But for me, that definition, if you like, of golf yourself healthy is just too simplistic for my mind, at least anyway, because if I think about the stories you've just told, the examples you've just given, Mark, those are manifestations of how golf is good for people.
Yeah.
I've got the very first episode of season 3 of my podcast that will go out in early January, and would love for your Depeche readers, followers to come and listen, is with Professor Andrew Murray, who's the chief medical advisor to the RNA. And he and I were talking about how if you look at the Golf and Health report that the RNA published 4 years ago, one of my favorite, so they give case study examples in there of how golf is good for you, basically. And you mentioned Carnoustie. And number 10, case study number 10 of 10 is the Carnoustie Memories Group. And I don't know if you're familiar with them, but basically the essence of what they do is, as far as I've understood it, anyway, you've got some elderly folks who maybe can't physically play golf anymore. Some probably still can, but they're getting together through the lens of golf nostalgia. They sit down, they have a cup of tea or coffee, and they go through photographs and old memories, cherished golf memories at Carnoustie or golf they've played together. And I just think that's when we say, and when you guys at Depeche say golf is more, golf is healthy, those are the ones that really yank on my heartstrings more than just saying, I'm going to go out and have a round of golf and it's going to clear my mind, which it does. Don't get me wrong, but golf yourself healthy has a much bigger meaning than I think people realize. And I wanted just to get that across. But Emil, how do you look back in the year?
I was asked this question a couple of days ago, and on a dinner table with friends, like, what are you proud of this year? And the first thing that kind of came to mind was also like the physicality of this issue, actually, to have something, in print, like in this analog world, it's kind of a different feeling. Like to have something where really all this, like the work we've done this year is really kind of, manifested. And obviously it's, like growing the reach and, maybe like selling as much as like in the beginning you were hoping to is not always as easy as it, as you hoped it would be. Yeah. So I guess it's really this thing of like, it's also difficult to bring across, like once people hold it in their hands, like the look on people's faces, it's like, oh, wow. I don't know, heavy and like seems valuable, and that's the feedback. That's also the feedback that whenever we're and I mean, of course, we're learning a lot, and we're a 2.5 man band, and we're doing everything that needs to be done in the company, and a lot of that we're struggling with. But whenever I guess there's been so much love, as Mark said, like getting us through that. And and I guess another thing, like for me, I think that working together and having a partner in crime to do that with, and developing a working relationship that is really kind of where you can feed off each other and be get the best out of each other creatively. At least Mark gets the best of me creatively. I
think you just subsumized it with this one sentence. I didn't expect that. When people get the magazine for the first time, they open it up and say, "Oh, I wasn't expecting this." or people will say, "This isn't a magazine. This is a book," and seeing their face and their astonishment is something that's very, very satisfying indeed.
I'm pretty confident this will have occurred to you guys, but I think there's something quite understated about the wider influence and impact that your magazine is having on people. Because, if I think about, maybe if I give an example of my wife, and also my wife and I's friend Nicola, who's the graphic designer that I worked with to just help me with the brand design for GYH. Neither of them are sort of dyed-in-the-wool golfers. I mean, my wife, Kim, plays a little bit, hasn't played in a while, but by no means is not a golf nerd like I am, and doesn't have necessarily traditional views about golf, or rather maybe has certain views or sort of stereotypical views of golf. Equally, our friend Nicola, kind of similar, no real background in golf. And where I'm going with this, if you think about that overburdening and kind of like that reputation that golf has had in the past, I think both of them, the way they received Depeche, like for instance, when I just received my copies of Volume 2 and took it out the wrapper, my wife was, wowed by it. The smell of it, the feel of it, the tactile feel. I mean, these are all, and so what I'm trying to say is, if one of the kind of either intended or unintended outcomes you can have with Depeche is by presenting golf in a light which, I don't know, attracts other people to the game who may have ruled themselves out of it, or presents it in a way that challenges their own stereotypical views of it, if you know what I mean, then that can only be a good thing. I wanted to talk more about collaboration, because if we come now to, speaking about Volume 2, which has just come out, and I very much hope that my GYH community members and listeners would consider going out and buying a copy, not least because of the amazing sales pitch I feel I just did on it just 2 seconds ago. But was that good? Did I do
that
it?
Was all right. That was right.
That was all right.
Yeah, that's all right.
Yeah, no, I'll get it squeaky clean for volume.
To the sentence. That was very good. Thank you.
So, no, but I think first and foremost, so if I kind of reflect on the year that I've had as well, I think since I've launched Golf Yourself Healthy, I think the flagship product and offering that I have is a podcast. But if I'm honest, my writing is kind of one of these talents and skills which I never really fully appreciate. I've always known that I could articulate myself well in both verbal and written form, maybe in like a day-to-day or professional context. But one of the things I've truly loved and cherished this year is just being able to do that and apply it in a golf context. And so if something you were saying, Emil, about how teamwork and collaboration and one key thing I've learned this year, and I hope to do more of next year, including with you guys, is more of that collaboration. Because when you're trying to grow something and trying to get yourself noticed and seen and heard or whatever, like it just makes sense to be doing it with people who share similar values. And so, I mean, Emil, I think for the opportunity for me to write for Depeche, if my memory serves me right, I think you and I first connected earlier in the year, an Instagram chat, and I feel like I outright asked, like, I would love to write for you guys at some point. I'm a big one on reflection and learning, continuous personal development, right? And I sort of would encourage anyone who's listening to back yourself. And so I had to back myself to almost ask you, could I write? And so for me, the act of writing brings me so much joy, and to be able to do and to have a piece. So when Volume 2 arrived in the post, Mark, you were talking about things that make you emotional. I mean, in this very podcast studio that I'm in now, my dad was down visiting from Scotland the other week. My dad's a bit of a stoic, not one to show too much emotion, but he's been so helpful and supportive to me in getting GYH off the ground. And he was the first person who I wanted to see and read my article. So I gave him one of the 2 copies you gave me. And there was a a father and son embrace and hug moment. And he said, "Well done on being published." And, I wanted you guys to know that, that's what this means to me. It's a big deal it's one of my proudest achievements beyond anything I've done in my corporate career, for example. So, and thank you for the opportunity. But let's talk about the piece, if that's okay with you guys. So I think within this, right, I would love to reflect on writing style as well, because, you guys have been writing for some time. This piece was entitled The Maddening Crowd, I think is the title that we went with in the end. And what I will say, first of all, is I found that throughout this year, when I've been writing monthly journal articles for my own website, I take this approach, which is I have a theme in my mind, and it may be a theme that kind of isn't an explicitly golf theme even, but I try and interweave it within golf. But to get the core message of the theme across, I'll look for like an inspirational quote to talk to it. And that's almost my starting point and somewhat of my anchor. And so the piece in question, The Maddening Crowd, is, as I would like to describe it and how I view it, is, amongst other things, a bit of a love letter to golf societies, or to sort of to express my affection for how going on golf trips over the years with friends has what that has meant to me, and almost the deeper meaning that lies within them. But the quote from Nietzsche in this case, which I don't even have it to hand. Do you know what? My other copy, volume 2, is still in its wrap. Have you got it there, Emil?
I've got it open, yeah. Madness is something rare in individuals, but in groups, parties, people's ages, it is the rule.
So where I was going with that was I wanted to find a way of getting the point across, which is when groups of people, particularly men, and I can comment on that because I am one of those, and I've been on many golf trips with groups of men before, is it's funny how as individuals we'll carry ourselves or behave towards one another on and off the golf course in a certain way, and often quite well-mannered and respectful sorts of ways. But then when big groups of guys get together on golf trips, and when they drink a lot as well, things get a bit silly and a bit out of hand, and people start behaving in weird ways and saying things that they wouldn't normally say, that maybe are kind of like off their moral compass, if you know what I mean. So I guess it was also for me to reflect on how my relationship with these golf societies and golf trips in general has definitely evolved in the last 5 or so years. I don't drink anymore. I had a very troublesome relationship with alcohol, and that actually played out in some of these environments as well. And so now that I don't drink and I'm in those environments, and I feel quite, I always have to rev myself up every year to go to those trips, because I feel like the odd one out. But I guess, yeah, I'm going to pause there for a second, because I want to almost see, how did you guys receive the piece? We're not going to do big spoilers here as well, because the whole point of this is people go out and buy the magazine, read it for yourself. But how did you guys receive it? What did you take away from it?
I think maybe to start, I mean, like many things that we're trying to do, I mean, as we said, like different perspectives, and I kind of felt like it was just a relatable perspective, even if like your situation is not, or like you don't define yourself in exactly those situations. So, I mean, for example, I haven't really ever done a golf society trip like that, but I kind of, I know maybe the dynamics from, I've done, maybe in the past, like ski trips that were, unhinged and lots of guys drinking. And I'm obviously part of more like non-golf related, but I just felt like what you were, the point you were trying to get across, or like on the one hand, personally, I think like a lot of people just can relate to it, because I think a lot of people, me included, went part of, similar dynamics. Maybe there is a sense that, I mean, obviously you want to be, it's very important, as you also state, like to, be part of these groups and like the community and like getting together, seeing friends, connecting over golf. All that is very, very good. But I feel like, a lot of people may sense like in some context that something is off. And I think that's kind of where you put a finger. And the other thing that I think was important to us was, I mean, I just feel like it kind of, it related very well to kind of the values of, I mean, I guess we are like a quirky and magazine open to all kinds of, maybe sometimes even also louder perspectives, but this was one where, I don't know, I just felt like it's something that needs a voice also, because it's kind of, it's not an anti piece, but it's pointing a finger on something that's, I don't know, like, not the nicest kind of aspect of golf culture these days that we're living in. So, the one thing was the I think personal relatability, and the other kind of an important kind of point to make in a wider golf society culture context, I guess.
How about you, Mark?
I think I can just add to what Emil has said, because as we said earlier, we do basically every piece we have in the magazine goes through four eyes and is discussed thoroughly, and we work together on most stuff. So what Emil says just is what we both think. For me, it was even slightly more, because it chimes, or it relates to a certain culture of wanting to belong and having the feeling that you need to do things to belong. And then you've got like 10 people and everyone thinks he has to do things or she has to do things to belong. At the end, nobody's really happy doing this. And I could relate to that very, very strongly, because I used to hang out with people I still love, and we all took drugs, and far too many drugs, and drank too much. And I at one point in my life said, no, I'm not going to smoke that shit anymore, because it's not good for me. I get paranoid. One of my best friends says, yeah, so do I. And then we just quit immediately, and it's never been a topic between us again. And I think that a lot of people find themselves in situations like this, not only in golf societies, but in as Emil said, skiing groups, football clubs, and things get toxic. Just to use this much used word, but things do get toxic very quickly, without people really wanting to be like that. And I think your piece does shed a light on how these mechanisms work. And I thought it was really important to have something like that in our second issue, because it's going somewhere where people usually do not go, in a entertainment magazine format of golf, wonderful golf pictures and scenic sundown lightning and great greens and stuff like that. So I thought it was a really important color facet that we truly needed for the second issue. And I'm extremely happy with how the piece turned out. It was, you know, that it was quite a bit of work too. It went back and forth until we found what we really wanted to say. But that's the way it is, and we were extremely proud to help you on this, or to be part of this voyage as a writer, which is something that I tremendously like doing. Is being part of a creative process and seeing how things develop and how they come to bloom. And so, I think we're both very, very happy with it.
Yeah. Thank you both. There's, I also see the piece as very much a self. What it is for me, because it will. I hope it will do something and be received in a certain way by your readers. And if there's anyone that listens to this and does read it, I'd love if they got in touch because I'd love to needle in it and discuss it. But for me, I see it as a bit of a self-discovery, personal growth story. Because I think, like you said, Mark, there was a bit of work that we put into it, and as ever, when a contributor writes a draft piece and then puts it over, you guys look it over, or several eyeballs look it over and suggest some tweaks. And one of the best tweaks that was suggested and that we included in the end was a line which, Emil, you maybe have it there, which is where I describe how at the time in my life where I had stopped drinking and I was at probably my most vulnerable moment, and I went on a golf trip within about a month of stopping drinking and put myself into the eye of the storm and ordered a Diet Coke in a curry house when 12 other guys are ordering pints of lager and got ridiculed for it. There's a line in there, I think. Have you got it, Emil? Where I say, like, was I in the right place or the wrong place?
Maybe you're in the wrong place, yeah.
Yeah, and I guess what I'm saying is, at that time, I was looking for empathy, I was looking for understanding and for love, and hoping that somehow that would be forthcoming, even in a group setting. And yeah, I just remember feeling quite vulnerable and how being, initially when I ordered that Diet Coke, sandwiched in between all these pints of lager, the plate, it was a cacophony of noise, everyone pointing and laughing at me kind of thing. But then walking out of there and individually guys coming up to me saying, "Are you okay? How are you doing?" So I got that empathy and care and understanding, in an individual setting. But I just thought, is it not just fascinating? And I don't, this is the thing, I don't want anyone who reads this piece to read it and go, he's virtue signaling, or he's too sensitive or anything like that. It's more like, what I would love for someone to come away from that piece is kind of going, scratching their chin a little bit and going, what could I do differently just to be a bit more sound to my mates, when I turn up on a golf trip next, that's kind of what I would love to achieve, and for others to maybe learn something about themselves in the process. I don't know. Did that come across?
I think so.
Definitely. And I mean, also just, that question that, I guess also the initial quote points to, and what you were saying is like, isn't it fascinating? It definitely was something, I don't know, like it does also just raise that general question, where does this herd mentality come from, and what does it do to us generally?
Yeah, and I mean, the other thing too is just spotlighting different perspectives and different voices. It's almost a minority perspective in a way, like someone who doesn't drink, especially here in the UK and in golf culture. I am the exception to the rule. And I talk about rules in that Nietzsche quote, and it's, I think it's always valuable when, because part of my story as well, and the whole origin story of Golf Yourself Healthy, is child loss, baby loss. And I feel quite, again, misunderstood and in that context, and this idea of, I said to you guys right at the beginning of the recording, I think adversity, resilience is very much part of my story and part of the Golf Yourself Healthy story in DNA. And actually, if anything, I have learned a lot about myself. This is how I'd round this out. I've learned a lot about myself through the process of playing golf, broadly speaking, but in attending these golf trips, as I as a person have evolved and changed over the years and learned more about myself in the process, I've now come to, and actually what writing this piece has given me is that ability to take more of a bird's eye view on it and step back and go, actually, do you know what? When I play golf and who I play golf with, what am I looking for? What do I need to be enriched as a human being? And maybe I'm not quite getting it there. Now, that is not to say that I'll never go on those trips again. And something you said, Mark, I think it was really important is, you still to this day spend time with friends who you used to drink and drug with back in the day, but that's not you anymore. I think that's really important, because that's another thing I want to get across in this piece is I'm not saying it's us and them, or like that lot are the wrong uns, and like I'm the holier than thou kind of. I still believe that the variety is a spice of life, and I think we should always surround ourselves with people with different experiences and different views and things. And so there is something very much I enjoy about those trips and being around those guys that I still do enjoy, albeit there are things that happen on those trips that just aren't me anymore, and that's okay, but I have a choice whether or not I go to them or don't go to them, and yeah, so that's it really.
What I could really associate with there's not only the element of drinking, and to point that out and to make that clear, I still enjoy a good drink every once in a while, but I've never been in these vile environments where drinking takes overhand and people sort of lose themselves. That's just not where I go. I for myself, I have a more of a problem with larger groups. I have problems with navigating larger groups anyway. I feel totally overwhelmed when I'm with 10 people. It just gets. It's just too much for me. It's not the way I like to communicate. People shouting at each other, and then it just doesn't work for me. So that was something that I saw in this text also. That it's not only about the alcohol, but it's also about how big these groups can get, and how that it's just not the communication form that I'm looking for, and the place where I find what I'm looking for when I go to play golf. That's why I cherish going on road trips with Emil, because it's just two of us on a road, and then in the rough. He's on the fairway, I'm in the rough, and then but he's got better eyes than I have, so he'll find my balls and stuff like that. So, but there's something
useful friend to have then.
Absolutely. There's something in this text that goes beyond just the drinking madness. There's more in there that I can very strongly relate to. Yeah, please go out, read it yourself. It's a wonderful piece, and we cherish every sort of feedback. Also, if you've read it, you can also write to us.
One last thing, and it's kind of something you said, Kris, but. What I just realized is also just the awareness that, like, from a certain age, like I'm in entering my early 30s, and I feel like a lot of groups just kind of like cling on to the same behaviors for forever and ever and ever, and like also to maybe put it out there that I don't know, and this can be a different time for everyone, but it's also okay for priorities and for perspectives and for those things to kind of change and evolve, and encouraging that, because I do feel like a lot of people and myself included, in many ways just kind of get used to certain ways of behaviors or what it means to be together, and they don't really change over the years, and it's okay for them to evolve. Maybe that's one thing that's you kind of did say that, but just a thing I kind of realized explicitly here.
Yeah, no, I love that point, because actually, yeah, there's something about one of the groups in particular that I reference in that text, which, maybe some of those guys will be listening to this, and I doubt they would disagree with me, which is, it's almost like some of the behaviors are stuck in this time warp. It's like that's how we always behaved when we were at school together. It's almost like, right, okay, this is that one weekend in the year where we're away from our families and let's go mad, and it's just let's be really childish and kind of, which is hilarious and funny to a point, but then actually it's almost like, whoa, really? Are we still doing this? We're at the tender age of 38 or whatever. It's kind of. It's interesting. So,
but it says a lot about us, doesn't it? these things say a lot about it. How much we keep bottled up, how much we can't live up to who we are most of the time. So we bottle this all up. As you just said, once a year we go on this trip, and then everyone gets so drunk that they can't get up on the next morning, and they miss their tea times and all sorts of stuff. It just says a lot about how we function, how we are made to function, how we need to function in a society that, just expects us to go out there and do the work and then come back next day, do the work again and do the work again, until it's all so bottled up that it needs this moment to spill or explode, or
exactly, Mark. But I love that point. But to that point, can we not just allow golf to be that thing that releases the pressure valve? Because then it brings me back to a point that I'm trying to make in the piece, which is, when we go on these trips, why are we going to them, and what do we value about them?
Yeah.
Does golf come first, or does getting pissed come first? I
think that's the most interesting thing, is that we are talking about, it's basically an experiment we're talking about, but we're talking about people who go on these trips once or twice a year, and maybe don't have the ventil to let off steam otherwise, that are busy in office jobs and get stuck in their life. And then as Emil says, or as you said earlier, I don't remember, just keep on reenacting, going through the moves they used to go through, right? Because this is the weekend we have, and this is the only weekend we have. This is the only time we're going to have a good time. Let's have a good time. And let's not talk serious stuff. Let's have a good time. It was interesting. We went on a trip, and I'm not going to say where it was, and we were working, and there were these. It was funny because we were discussing your piece while we were there, and there were a few groups from other countries there, a few male groups, and to be honest, they didn't really look like they were having a lot of fun trying to have a lot of fun. And that was something that you peer over there and you see them, they're all hungover and they've all been drinking, and they're going to play 9 holes. After 9 holes, they're going to have a break, and they'll be drinking alcohol at 10 o'clock in the morning. Then they'll play another 9 holes. They'll have lunch and drink, and then they'll go out again in the afternoon and play another 9 holes. And they'll just get totally sloshed, and you can basically smell them from their carts, and of course they're not going to walk. You can smell them from afar, and it just never really looks like fun. But then again, I've always been a crappy golfer. I can't hit a ball intoxicated. I can hardly hit a ball when I'm sober. When I'm drunk or when I'm drinking, I can putt for anything. So it's just something I can't really relate to, golf and alcohol.
That's something I didn't really refer to in the text that perhaps I should have, is these days I get so pissed off at the guys in the group who they get better the more they drink at golf. Well. Because that used to be me. I mean, I'm the opposite to you, Mark. Like, I used to, if you put a drink in me, then I was draining putts from 40 feet and kind of, or at least that's my romanticized recollection.
Did you do that, or did you feel like?
Yeah, maybe just, I just blacked out or something, and just then woke up and thought, oh yeah, I definitely drained the 50-foot putt. See how it just creeps up from 40 to 50. Anyway, guys, we've been going for quite some time, so we should probably put a lid on it. But look, thanks again for the opportunity. I think what's the best, easiest way for someone to go out there and grab themselves a copy?
Well, the easiest way at the moment is not to go out of the house at all, but to go online at www.depeche-golf.com and just click the button, buy the current issue, buy the first issue, buy a few T-shirts, look at the art we're selling, the collaborators we have put up. So there's loads of stuff to see and to buy if you want to. But that's the probably easiest way, and it will be shipped to you in a really snug envelope, and it will come without a dent. Well, most of them come without dents or being bent or anything. So you don't even have to leave the house. I'd strongly advise you to stay at home, go to the homepage, buy the book or buy the magazine, and wait until it's delivered. So don't even leave the house. So that's the easiest way to do it.
Such sound advice. So in short, buy the damn thing.
Buy the damn thing now.
And you won't regret it. Oh, and by the way, read The Maddening Crowd in Volume 2. If you want to be in with a chance of winning a copy of Depeche Golf Volume 2 and to read The Maddening Crowd for yourself, then here's what you need to do. Head to the GYH Substack using the link provided in the show notes, hit the subscribe button, and leave a comment on this episode. Besides the magazine giveaway, a free GYH Substack subscription will also give you access to exclusive podcasts and written content, as well as exclusive discounts to partner brands such as Vice Golf. Until the next time, however, always remember to embrace the rough and forever cherish the fairway.